For the last few weeks, I've been talking about the Rwandan genocide, but one of the problems when talking about such a horrific act is that we can think, well, that can never happen to me, not here. Because it can seem as if genocides are just a sudden moment of weakness or insanity that consumes that culture. Because that's how we usually learn about them, as a news flash once the killings have already started. But that isn't how genocides form. Genocides grow slowly from decades of hatred, distrust, and denial. They only appear sudden to us because we begin paying attention only when that hatred has already borne fruit in murder. Now, the International Campaign to End Genocide, as part of Genocide Watch, has created a list of 10 stages of genocide, beginning with perfectly normal behavior that all societies participate in, and slowly walking through more and more troubling behavior that provide the foundational thinking, the cultural acceptance, the fuel needed for genocide to grow. Today I'm going to walk through those 10 stages, what they mean, how Rwanda fulfilled each stage leading up to the 1994 genocide, and then take a look at where America today stands on each of those stages as well. So to do this, I'm going to be using a lot of video clips, all of which are from the last 2.5 years, so 2016 to May 2018. And all of these videos have been edited for time. So for a fuller context, please check out the full videos, all of which will have a link in the description below. Also, as we go through these stages, keep in mind that they are not cut and dry. One stage bleeds into the next, and a single event can be part of many different stages at once. So the first identified stage of genocide is classification. Classification is the process where a culture is divided into us and them, whether by religion, education, politics, race, you name it. For the most part, this is a perfectly normal process. I mean, everyone needs to be able to differentiate between friend and foe, between family and not. But the harder it is to move from one category to another, the more meaning is put into those classifications, and the less interaction there is between the groups, then the more dangerous it is. Some amount of classification is normal, but it becomes dangerous when language like these people begin to appear more often and in a hateful way, often supported by biased laws and/or twisted religious views. In Rwanda, the people were classified as Hutu and Tutsi. Now that classification was artificial, imposed by Europeans, but it defined what jobs they could have, what education they could receive. And the deeper those classifications got, the more anger and pain was directed at the other. Stereotypes developed that demonized the other side without evidence, and changing from one group to another first got harder and then got impossible. In America, there are many ways that people classify each other, and often the language we use to talk about those classifications is intentionally derogatory to try to increase support for our own group as opposed to those people. Like in this clip of Rick Saccone running for office.
I've talked to so many of these on the left, and they have a hatred for our president. I tell you, many of them have a hatred for our country. And I tell you some more. My wife and I saw it again today. They have a hatred for God. It's amazing.
This categorization can also be used to instill fear of the other in order to legitimize something that the dominant group wants, as in these clips from then candidate Donald Trump.
They're not sending their best. They're bringing drugs. They're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people.
They don't want these people, so they send them to the United States. And certainly we do have killers and plenty of other problems coming over. We take them because other countries don't want them. We're like a dumping ground. The United States, Aaron, is like a dumping ground for the world's problems.
Finally, these classifications are often reinforced by proclaiming that God is on our side and not with them, as in this clip from Pat Robertson.
The Lord's plan is being put in place for America, and these people are not only revolting against Trump, they're revolting against what God's plan is for America. These other people have been trying to destroy America. These left-wingers and so-called progressives are trying to destroy the country that we love.
The second stage of genocide is symbolization, which is also a universal characteristic, in that when we divide people into groups, we give those groups names, like American or Democrat, African, immigrant, patriot. Groups are also often give symbols to represent them. Now, these can be physical symbols, like the yellow star for Jews in Nazi Germany, or titles and slurs that we give another group, or just insults to the people that you don't like, as in these titles that a liberal comedian gives President Trump.
He's the devil, Orange Hitler.
I could call Trump a racist or a misogynist or xenophobic or unstable or incompetent or impotent.
In Rwanda, this took the form of racial slurs, insults, and identification papers. But this symbolization can also take on a religious tone of lifting up one person or group with symbolic language far above everyone else, like in this clip with Mary Colbert on the Jim Baker Show.
It's not that Donald Trump is all that perfect of a guy. We all know he's not. That's not how God works. He works through the ones he chooses.
Right.
We don't choose them.
No.
All we have to do is recognize them.
Yeah.
And when you recognize a chosen one, and you have the discernment to know that they've been chosen and know that that's the will of God, then your life will be blessed.
Yes.
And if you come against the chosen one of God, okay, you are bringing upon you and your children's children curses like you have never seen.
That's right.
It puts a holy fear in me.
The point is that specific groups begin to have emotions attached to them, and that they begin to stand for ideas as well as simply demographics. Meaning gets attached through symbolism and naming to groups. The third stage of genocide is discrimination, which in a literal sense just means the ability to choose between people. And in some cases, that can be good. I want a gun store owner to use his discrimination to choose not to sell an assault rifle to the guy on meth yelling at his wife, right? I mean, we want our fighter pilots to wisely choose, i.e. discriminate, in their targets and not bomb everyone equally. The problem is that discrimination quickly expands between good reasons to choose between people and into illegitimate stereotypes and racism, primarily founded upon the symbolic meaning attached to the person being interacted with. So we associate somebody we are interacting with a particular group, which has a particular negative meaning to us, and so we choose not to associate with them. That is discrimination. Here's the point I want to make clear. Everyone believes that their discrimination has good cause, which is why no one considers themselves a racist, because racism is discrimination, is choosing without good reason. And everyone believes their reason is good. In Rwanda, the Tutsi were originally discriminating against the Hutu, denying them jobs, education, and more based on their identification. But when the Hutu revolution came, the tables were flipped, and the rage that the Hutu had felt for generations was expressed in murder and discrimination of their own against the Tutsi, in similar ways that they had experienced. In America, discrimination has been a constant problem, from the treatment of Native Americans to the Jim Crow laws, which were only abolished in living memory. And it is still a major issue, with several different means of discriminating between people making their way through the courts right now as it is decided whether they are legitimate or unfair ways of choosing between people. For example, President Trump's travel ban, which the court questioned this way.
How is a court to know if in fact it's a Muslim ban in the guise of national security justification?
Judge Gould, I think that's the nub of the case.
Or the religious case to discriminate against LGBT groups seeking their services.
Their newborn daughter was turned away by a physician at her first doctor's appointment.
Another doctor walked in, and then she said, your doctor had prayed on it and decided that she can't see you today.
The fourth stage of genocide, dehumanization, is in my opinion the most critical. Our shared humanity provides a final check against unwarranted cruelty, and if it is removed, then there are no longer any ethical restrictions. We can do whatever we want to someone because they aren't really human. Now, this dehumanization is an extension of the symbolism from the second step. Language that had been used to separate and demean people before become language that strips the humanity from those people. As in Rwanda, where the radio and the media was extensively used to dehumanize the Tutsi, calling them enemies, not true Rwandans, and in particular, cockroaches. Now, here is an actual clip from Rwandan radio, June 19th, 1994.
Avis à tous les individus qui nous écoutent, oui, à tous les individus qui nous écoutent, le Rwanda appartient à ceux qui le défendent vraiment. Et vous, les individus, vous n'êtes pas des Rwandais. inyenzi inkotanyi n'ababwiye abasirikare bacu nibo ba mbere babwira urubyiruko rwagutse kugira ngo bafashe abasirikare bacu babwira inkumi babwira abasore murabyumva rero inyenzi ntabwo zishobora gukandira abantu bose.
And here is popular American radio host Alex Jones.
Is that Nancy Pelosi or is that Chucky Schumer?
Pelosi is the enemy. Maxine Waters, I don't even know what planet she's from. I mean, the Democrats, the left, the liberals, these are strange, bizarre, anti-logic, anti-American freaks, each and every one of them.
Nancy Pelosi came by the house. Did you know that?
However, these freaks are serious and they threaten to kill our family because we trounce and spotlight the cockroaches on the left that hate America, hate the Constitution, hate the American dream, hate independence.
You guys, we're taking the garbage out. Can somebody get me a little whisker, little scooper, little dustbin? Don't try to get out. Let me just help you a little bit. You don't want to be violent or anything like Antifa. We're not being violent. And that is, well, doing what the General Ted Nugent says. Bye, Democratic Party. And and Paul Ryan's down in there too. Bye, Paul Ryan.
Here is alt-right leader Richard Spencer.
It's not just that they are leftist and cucks. It's not just that many are genuinely stupid. Indeed, one wonders if these people are people at all.
And this is President Trump's own son.
You know, it's so sad. You see the Democratic Party, they're imploding. I've never seen hatred like this. I mean, to me, they're not even people. It's so sad. I mean, morality's just gone. Morals have flown out the window. We deserve so much better than this as a country.
Right. And here is President Donald Trump himself.
When we're taking people out of the country, you wouldn't believe how bad these people are. These aren't people. These are animals. And we're taking them out of the country at a level and at a rate that's never happened before.
The fifth step, organization, can be formal or informal, but is when those underlying prejudices and dehumanization begin to take shape in groups. So the fear and or hatred of another group prompts people to get together, often under the guise of self-protection. Now these groups, if not directly under the government's control, at least feel that they have the implicit support of those in power. This is the stage where words begin to turn into action, if not fully into genocide yet. In Rwanda, the Interahamwe militia were formed because they, Hutu, felt threatened by the Tutsi that they hated, and so they gathered into militias and armed themselves for self-defense. Now these militias then became the primary motivators of the genocide, and they roamed the countryside comparatively well armed, encouraging and even forcing participation in the genocide from pretty much everyone they met. Meanwhile, in Charlottesville, North Carolina,
Jews will not replace us! Jews will not replace us! Jews will not replace us!
Similarly, recently 3 men in Kansas, part of a local militia, were convicted of trying to blow up an apartment building full of Somali refugees. Their defense was that hate is not a crime, and they were simply engaging in locker room talk. In the 20 days after Donald Trump was elected president, 867 separate hate crimes were reported. 202 of them the day after his election, including the case of a 75-year-old gay man ripped from his car and beaten while his assailant said, and I quote, "You know my new president says we can kill all you faggots now." End quote. The sixth stage is polarization, where propaganda is working overdrive to even more fully divide the people. So moderates are often driven into silence and the extremes on both sides take over. In Rwanda, this involved the killing of the moderate prime minister and president to clear the way for the genocide, as well as intimidation of other political groups than the one that was in charge. Vilification of alternative views is common in this phase, like this clip from President Trump.
We have laws that were written by people that truly could not love our country.
A good example of polarization can be seen in how the extremely liberal Samantha Bee and the extremely conservative Glenn Beck each talk about how their viewers would react to simply sitting down and talking with the other person.
My audience is going to think that I am crazy for sitting down with you.
My audience hates your guts.
My audience hates your guts more.
My audience would like to stab you relentlessly in the eye.
Okay. My audience wants to kill me for normalizing a lunatic like yourself.
Really?
Yes.
Really?
The other side is seen as evil, and anyone who supports them cannot be rational, good, nation-loving people, that the extreme is the only way.
We've really drawn out the other side to show their true America-hating evil, their true prosperity-hating evil. And then I ask, why do they love communism? Why do they love collapse?
You don't ask why. Just know that evil, dishonesty, and scam artists have always been around, and that right now they're liberal, they're Democrat, they're rhinos, they're Hollywood, they're fake news, they're media, they're academia, and they're half of our government, at least. So come to that realization. There are rabid coyotes running around. You don't wait till you see one to go get your gun. Keep your gun handy, and every time you see one, you shoot one.
And now, as you can see today, we greatly outnumbered the anti-white, anti-American filth. And at some point, we will have enough power that we will clear them from the streets forever. That which is degenerate in white countries will be removed.
Once only extreme positions can be held and the sides are fully separate, then no real discussion can happen, and the only apparent solution is the elimination of the enemy, which begins to be planned in the seventh stage, preparation. The groups in charge will begin buying weapons, making plans, making sure everyone else is afraid of the targeted group. This often includes making sure people think the other side is a threat to them.
You better find out who you go to church with. You better find out who's around you, who's your neighbors. The war is starting.
Pastor, it has started. It really has.
They're trying to conquer us. I can feel their will. I can see it.
In Rwanda, this was done over the course of years, though the exact timeline is still unclear as to when the Hutu leadership really communicated with the Interahamwe and came up with the final decision to commit genocide. While the government does not need to be directly overseeing this, like it was in Nazi Germany, an important part in convincing people to participate in genocide is reassuring people that acts of violence will not be punished, but instead are encouraged when aimed at the targeted group.
Knock the crap out of them, would you? Seriously. Okay? Just knock the hell. I promise you, I will pay for the legal fees. I promise. I promise. There won't be so much because the courts agree with us, too. What's going on in this country?
Part of the problem and part of the reason it takes so long is nobody wants to hurt each other anymore, right? Our country has to toughen up, folks. We have to toughen up. These people are bringing us down. Remember that. They're bringing us down. No reason for it. These people are so bad for our country, you have no idea, folks. You have no idea. They contribute nothing. Nothing.
Try not to hurt them. If you do, I'll defend you in court. Don't worry about it. If she gets to pick her judges, nothing you can do, folks. Although the Second Amendment people, maybe there is, I don't know. But
preparation leads directly to persecution, where some groups are specifically targeted. Lists may be drawn up and used against them, for instance, like in this suggestion to track every Muslim in America.
Should there be a database system that tracks the Muslims here in this country?
There should be a lot of systems beyond database. I mean, we should have a lot of systems.
Oh, I would certainly implement that.
Specific persecutions that deny access to food, water, or education, removal of property, or relocation into specific camps can all happen in this stage, as implied here.
They're discussing drafting a proposal to reinstate a registry for immigrants from Muslim countries,
Yeah, and be perfectly honest, it is legal. They say it'll hold constitutional muster. I know the ACLU is going to challenge it, but I think it'll pass. And we've done it with Iran back a while ago. We did it during World War II with Japanese, which, you know, call it what you will, maybe wrong.
You're not proposing we go back to the days of internment camps, I hope.
No, I'm not proposing that at all, Megan. But what I am saying is that we need to protect America first.
That's the kind of stuff that gets people scared, Carl.
Fortunately, this has not been implemented in America in any concerted way yet, only suggested and implied. But in Rwanda, denial of rights, education, movement, money, and more were commonplace. Finally, the ninth stage is extermination, where an entire group of people are purposely killed. In Rwanda, it was man, woman, and child hacked to death by the common, everyday people who had been corrupted by fear, divided by the media, and spurred on by the militia. And that led to the 10th stage, denial. No one wants to admit that they tried to kill an entire group of people. In Rwanda, they anticipated the need for this denial, and so they purposely drove out all of the foreigners, especially the press, as well as controlling all of the local state media. And the best prevention for a cover-up like this is a strong and free press corps, because no one wants to see their murders broadcast to the entire world. Genocide is a serious thing, and it happens all over the world. The language, the fear, the hatred slowly creep into a culture, and people use that fear to control and divide people and to sustain their own power. And the longer that hatred and fear saturates the nation, the deeper the roots grow and the closer it creeps to genocide. Now, I don't think America is on the brink of genocide. As I'm sure you could tell, the later stages were not nearly as fully represented as the first ones. They're only just beginning to bud, and that is a good thing. But we are definitely walking down this path in just the last few years. I think we are in a similar place to Rwanda in the mid-60s or 70s, or Germany post-World War I. And this hatred, divisiveness, distrust, and especially dehumanization cannot continue, or we will be in danger of it bearing the fruit of genocide in another generation if they grow up saturated with this hatred. I know this hasn't been a fun topic. Next week, I'll be taking a look at some of the aftermath of the genocide, and in particular, how they went about trying to bridge some of these gaps and find forgiveness after such a horrific killing. As always, thank you for watching. Have a great week. See you next video.